Hi everyone, I'm Susan Birch and welcome to another Health Detective podcast. And today I'm really excited to introduce you to Sarah Ahern. Now Sarah is a New Zealander, so it's fabulous having a fellow Kiwi on the podcast. And she has decided to hit down a pathway of a new career. So I think it was last year she got herself certified as a pre-cure coach and did a certificate in nutritional sciences. And now she's embarking on helping women to regain their health, lose weight, and reverse type 2 diabetes. So Sarah, welcome. Wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a real pleasure. Would you tell us just a little bit about yourself? Why you decided to transition into this new career, and then we can get into talking about more about nutrition and health coaching and how it can help people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it was the beginning of last year. It was before that I started sort of searching for something different. I've for the last 22 years I've been a beauty therapist, and I've thoroughly enjoyed my career. Absolutely loved it. I got a lot from it. It was an amazing career to make women feel good about themselves. And then I had 6 years off and to be a stay-at-home mum. I've got 3 young girls, and I went back to work a couple of years ago, and it was great getting back into work, just to be able to not be a mother for a day, have a different identity, put my uniform on and go and be a beauty therapist. And I enjoyed it to see clients and to be with people, and the team that I worked with absolutely just got me up in the morning. That's what made me happy. But there was something missing. The therapy just wasn't quite doing it for me anymore. And so I sort of started, searching for something that I was passionate about, because I wanted to have that same feeling that I had when I was 18, 19, when I was studying to be a beauty therapist. And I needed that again. I needed a reason to get out of bed in the morning and have that sort of passion and drive. And my kids were getting a little bit older. I could focus a little bit more about myself again and what I wanted. So I have always been passionate about health and nutrition. And so I thought, well, where can I go with this? So Precure came up. I'd never heard of them, and it was just perfect. It was just what I wanted to do. And I thought, this is great. This is me. So I found myself in that time not watching Netflix, not watching TV. I was studying. I was doing my own sort of research in this time before I found Precure, just because I found it so interesting. I was just hungry to learn more and more about why we get sick and why we are here today and what's gone wrong. So I started with Precure. I did the health coaching, and I graduated last November. I certified, and I've started my new business, Metabolic Switch.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. And I can just so relate to that passion. I've had that passion for 40 years. So yeah. I can really relate to how you feel and how exciting it is to discover this information and then start, seeing the benefits in your own life, and then just really wanting to share it with other people. Because it really does make such a difference. And I think, our nutrition is one of the foundations of one of the building blocks for everything else we build in our life. And trying to build a good, happy, healthy, productive life without those solid building blocks gets more challenging as we get older and, have more kids and all the stress of life kicks in.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. So tell me a little bit about how health coaching helps people, because, people will come and say, and I'm sure you hear this, oh, I know that I eat healthy. I eat healthy is a really common thing that people say. And we can get into breaking down what healthy eating is shortly. But the difficulty people face is in the mental game. And, we're inundated with boot camps and quick fixes and detoxes and all these other processes without, really changing that mindset. So do you want to talk about the mindset a little bit?
Yeah.
Self-talk?
Absolutely. And I think mindset is such a big part of your health and getting to reaching your health goals. And it's all very well knowing what we need to do. And a health coach is not just there to tell you what to eat. I mean, I could tell you what to eat, but doing it is actually the hard part. So health coaches I think are going to be huge in the future. And I think they're the missing sort of gap in the health system. We help people we work on behavior change and building sustainable habits. We've got the subconscious mind that we've got our subconscious and our conscious mind, and we're sort of hardwired in our subconscious mind like a computer. And it's full of, behaviors, habits, emotional responses, beliefs, values, all these things. And by the time we're an adult, it's taking up most of our conscious, our subconscious and conscious mind. So we've only got this small amount of conscious mind to make decisions. And sometimes when we're trying to lose weight or reach health goals, we fall off the wagon and we can't stick to it. And it's all about making that switch in the brain as well as in the body, which I like to talk about. I love making that sort of metabolic shift, but there's also that switch in the brain. And it's all about how we talk to ourselves, our self-love, how we could be trying to eat and lose weight and doing the right thing, but you're not going to lose that weight until you can start, talking to yourself the right way. So it's trying to work on, a health coach will help you sort of challenge those old behaviors and beliefs and look at where these things don't serve you anymore and try and rewire the brain to start thinking to build these new habits that is going to help create really good health. If that sort of makes sense. I explained that well enough.
And it's about rewiring those neural pathways.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think one of the struggles for people, and I don't know about you, but I have this struggle myself, is that there are some thought processes that we have that have been ingrained for such a long time. And although we know that they are unhelpful, they do kind of sit on your shoulder and they do raise their very ugly heads. And, I know this stuff very well. Mm-hmm. And yet, there are times when, there are times when that monkey on my shoulder just wants to get in and play havoc in my mind. Yep. So how do you help people work through that? Because that's a time when people just want to go, it's too hard, I'm going to throw in the towel.
Absolutely. And we've got this, there's different names for it. You've got your saboteur or your inner critic, or whatever you want to call it. And it's that little voice that comes along. And I mean, it happens to me, it happens to everybody. And like you say, it's from, it's ingrained in us for years and years and years, and it likes to appear and destroy us really, and to knock us back down and stops us from moving forward. So we try and work on that, and we can't sort of make this go away. It's there and it will always come and go, but it's learning how to put it to the side and move past it and just trying to, it's hard to explain, but it's acknowledging it, that it's there, but not letting it sort of take control of you.
Yes, and then I think it's a matter of developing some strategies that you can practice and identifying when you've gone into that place, because sometimes that's when we get lost, is because we've sort of gone in there because we're in our subconscious mind. And so we've gone in there subconsciously and we're just reacting. And so it's about being able to notice that we're reacting, not criticize ourselves for reacting or trying to do anything about it necessarily, but just noticing, oh, look, I'm reacting. I've come home, I've had a bad day at work, and I'm reacting by eating, some chippies and having a glass of wine and some chocolate, which is not in alignment with the beliefs and goals that I have.
Yeah, absolutely. And when a lot of people, we use food for comfort. And so, yeah, like you say, you've had a bad day, something's happened at work, and you come home and you go into the fridge and you reach for whatever it is, bad food, and you might feel good while you're eating it, but 5 minutes later, you feel even worse than you did before you walked in the door, because you're dealing with the bad day that you had, and you're dealing with the fact that you've eaten that food. So it doesn't serve you at all. So it's acknowledging that behavior. And it's almost like when I get people to sort of start focusing on behavior change, it's not trying to stop it, but just being aware of it, being mindful of it, and noticing the pattern that you've got. So if some people have a pattern, we all have patterns. We open the fridge and just stop and pause for a moment and think, okay, how can I sort of interrupt this pattern? Let's go have a glass of water, and maybe I'll have that snack afterwards, and just see what happens, and just kind of acknowledging it, being aware of it, and and not trying to, and there's things that you can do to make it so it's not available for you, putting things up high, not buying it in the first place. There's a lot of things that you can do to stop you from eating those foods as well. So just not having it in the house. Willpower is not going to be there if it's chocolate biscuits sitting in your pantry. You're not going to be able to control yourself, but you will if they're not there. So there's lots of different strategies, and we go through that, when I'm coaching as well, just to help you, because willpower is not always going to be the thing. It's very hard to control when you are emotionally eating.
And one of the interesting aspects of this change that intrigues me, and I'm sure that you come across it in your work as well, is I feel that we have two types, lots of different types of people, but we have two types of people in general. We have people who are what I call fast adopters. So they get a new idea. I think you and I talked about this in the past. They get a new idea, they see something, it clicks the switch for them, flips that switch, and they find it quite easy to adopt it. And then we have other people who, and it's not a criticism of that way of doing things, but some people like to consider things, they like to research, they like to process things in a different way. And so it's almost like they're a little bit more reluctant to make those big changes quickly. And I see people who come to me and, you'll get this, I'll start on Monday, or I'll start next week because I need a week to process it, or I need to go and buy the food. Or the other one, and I'm interested to know how you deal with this, the other one is, well, I've already got all this crap food in my cupboard, so I need to eat that before I start on my new me.
Yeah, well, funny you say that, because I actually it must have been from one of your podcasts that I was watching, and I can't even remember who you were interviewing, but I stole the idea.
Jim
Cathcart. Where is it?
Your waste or your waste.
And the waste, I even have it printed off. I printed it off, and I thought, right, I'm going to use this. So yeah, you've got this food in the cupboard that's not going to serve you in any way. How do you want to waste it? Do you want it to go to your waste as in W-A-I, your waste, W-A-I-S-T, or waste as in the bin, W-A-S-T-E, you choose, where do you want it to go? So I just think that's a fabulous way to, it needs to go in the bin. No one benefits from that food. I mean, and they say, go and give it to, you go put it in a food pantry or, like that. But, when it comes to things that are not good for us, then I prefer to put it in the bin.
Well, when it comes to things that aren't good for us, they aren't good for anybody.
Exactly.
And, I don't know if we want to go down this pathway with our discussion, but maybe we can, because I know talking about the health guidelines and things is a particular interest of yours as well. So it's interesting at the moment, we're hearing a lot about children's health, and we have children's obesity, and then we have children who are not having enough to eat. Absolutely. And sometimes those children who are obese are also not having enough to eat. And so we have, the lunch in schools and things like that. And I've looked carefully into some of the foods in those lunches, and it's going to be a topic of one of my rants coming up. But you're really torn inside emotionally, because you think, well, if a kid's starving, anything is better than nothing to have to eat. But then what are these foods that we're giving them to be helpful actually doing to them?
Exactly, I agree. And it's not just the kids that are starving, and this gets to me a lot, is kids in general just having so much convenient food, super ultra processed food from packets. Yeah. And I hear parents all the time say, oh, they're just kids, let them be kids, and yes, kids do process sugar. They're a lot more insulin sensitive than us adults, but what are we doing over time? We are going to destroy their metabolism and their metabolic health, and we're setting them up to have poor health later on in life. And I think it's really important to be teaching our children now, and my kids, they know everything about, I tell them everything about, we don't talk about, think this makes you fat, and this is, I don't want them having any issues when they're older, but we talk about what is going to fuel our body, what is healthy for our body, what is helpful for our brain. They know that sugar and grains and all the stuff that we're having is not good. So when they come home and say, oh, my friend has chips and biscuits, and we don't have that in our house, and I'm not going to apologize for that. And sometimes I feel like people, they almost make you feel guilty that you're not letting them be kids and you're not giving them the food that other kids have. But we need to teach that younger generation. We have got an epidemic in the world and in New Zealand of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, as young as 2 years old. And this is a result in not eating the right foods. So yeah, I think it's really important to feeding, our kids are no different than us. We should all be eating nutrient dense food that is low in sugar, not processed, and less things from packets.
And I think our first case of type 2 diabetes in children was 1996 or 1998. It was, it was around about there. So it's fairly new, in the great scheme of things, and yet it's exploding, we just have so many children now with type 2 diabetes, which is completely reversible.
Absolutely. I think that grinds my gears as well about, you get taught diabetes as a progressive, irreversible disease, and that's not the case at all. You can reverse type 2 diabetes. It's all about, the whole sort of the way that they treat diabetes is that you sort of wait till you get diabetes and then you get medicated, insulin, or the medication. There's not so much on prevention, and when there is talk of prevention, it is the wrong dietary advice. When I was studying to be a beauty therapist, we had to do a thesis on whatever we wanted that was interested in us, and I was only 18 at the time, and I've got it right here. It's my diabetes. So I've always had a very fascination, about diabetes and stuff like that. And I looked at it this morning. I looked at it months ago when I found it, and I absolutely cringe when I see what is in this book. And it even today, it's still in the guidelines for diabetics in New Zealand. And it says things like to eat, grains, carbohydrate, have smaller amounts of carbohydrates, which yes, that is right. But it says to eat whole grains, breads, cereals, swapping brown rice for white rice. Well, I'm sorry, but that is going to, it's going to make us sicker. And you don't see diabetics getting any healthier once they go on insulin and on medication. They're just getting worse. They're going to have 3 times more likely to die of heart disease, heart attacks, and all these myriad of diseases. So
health issues.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're not tackling diabetes how we should. And unfortunately, the way that we test for diabetes is flawed as well. You for years and years you just have your blood sugar tested, and it's, oh, my sugar's fine, but you're in the stage before diabetes that is when, and people are unaware of it, called insulin resistance. And I feel like diabetes has always been known as a blood sugar disease. It's your blood sugar, but really we should be treating it as an insulin problem. That's where the problem is. But insulin is really disregarded, and it's all about the blood sugar. So I think things should be done a lot differently, and I think that it would prevent so much more, people getting type 2 diabetes.
And this has been my life's work for at least the last 20 years when, I finally made that connection between insulin and type 2 diabetes. And it really was a light bulb moment that went on. And, I was studying at Otago University and doing my master's degree. So, even at that level of study, I hadn't even really heard of insulin. I only knew insulin as something that diabetics needed to take. Yes. It wasn't even in our consciousness. And when I'd gone to a conference to a training program in Melbourne, secondary prevention and cardiovascular disease, and the diabetes nurse started talking about insulin, and my brain just went, oh my God.
Yeah, that light bulb moment.
Yeah, and I've been including it in my blood testing ever since, and the pushback I get from GPs, that's not how you test for diabetes. HbA1c is the standard test for diabetes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And, they have no idea about things like the life of the red blood cell and whether HbA1c is accurate on an individual basis rather than, it's a good population test for research perhaps.
Yes.
But on an individual basis, not so much. And are someone's red blood cells living longer or living, and we can get into talking about plant-based diets, but people on plant-based diets often have a lot shorter life of their red blood cells, so they don't get glycolated, so they don't get damaged by that sugar because they've died quicker. And so when they get tested for HbA1c, they look fine. And then they get told, no problem. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that if we could focus on insulin, we can detect these issues 10 to 15 years before they even get diabetes. And so it's frustrating, and it makes me a little wild. And then of course we've got all the dietary guidelines, which of course is another thing of why we're here today.
And you and me both, it makes it both really frustrating. So let's talk a little bit about your dietary approach. So you're in the low carb camp in terms of keeping that insulin.
And I think I started, it was probably in my 20s. I went on cruise ships for a couple of years, and I had a great time over there, partying, eating American food and putting on weight. And that's when I think I went to low carb, probably when I came home after I put on about 10 kilos in 8 months of just drinking alcohol and late night snacks. And I think I did it just to lose weight. That was my focus back then. It was not about how, when you're 20, you're not thinking about your long-term health. You're thinking about how to get skinny. And so I thought, this works. This helps me lose weight. And then I realized that it had so many more benefits. It wasn't just weight loss. And people always complain about brain fog and irritability and feeling like having sleeps in the afternoon. And I just didn't understand it. I thought, I didn't get this. And I sort of started looking, diving a little bit deeper into it. And I just thought, this is the way that we should be living. And so I've always been, I've always been an animal eater. I've always, grown up that way, and plants as well. So lots of vegetables. And growing up in my 20s and while I was working, I was very much into my green, had a lot of green smoothies. And anyone who worked with me, and I know the girls will be watching this when this is, out there, they'll laugh because I'd come into work every morning with this big 2-litre jug, and it had everything green in it. No fruit. It was disgusting. It was absolutely disgusting. And it was kale, spinach, celery, broccoli. It was everything green. It was horrible. It was lumpy. It was gluggy. It wasn't watery. And I made sure that I drank this every single day. And I've always been the type of person that, and when I'm growing up, my mum said, eat your vegetables, they're healthy, you need to eat them. Even if I didn't like them, I just ate them. You just do, right? And that's how I was. So drinking these green smoothies, I did it because it was healthy. And I felt like I felt good, and I've always had the energy, but I always had stomach issues, always had gut issues, always bloated. My kids used to laugh at me, goes, Mum, you got your poo, baby, you know, and I'd look pregnant when I came home from work and everyone, you know, but I was highly constipated. And I thought, well, I've just got to eat more fiber, got to eat more Metamucil, more fiber. And then I started studying with pre-care and I was like, okay, constipation, if you adding fiber to it is a big recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And I had a friend who actually husband and wife, and they went carnivore. Now this was a year and a half ago, I had never heard of carnivore. And I was curious because I thought, how can you not have vegetables? You know, we've got it ingrained in our heads. You grow up, you have to have your vegetables. And they had always been reasonably healthy people, like they'd done keto and low carb and stuff. And so I thought, well, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it for a month and see what happens. And I've never really looked back. I have reintroduced some foods, some sauerkraut, and I eat avocados, and I eat a bit of seasonal fruit and stuff. So I'm not completely carnivore, but I'm definitely on the higher spectrum of, I'll say carnivore. I think that's the word. Yeah. And my tummy is so happy, and I'm regular.
I'm really pleased about that.
Yeah, and you still can go to the toilet. Here I was thinking that, before I was eating how I thought I should to go to the toilet, but I couldn't. And then all of a sudden I'm not having all that fiber, and and I'm so much better. And I must admit that I had a little bit of anxiety. The way I'd handle things in life, I always had, can be quite highly strung kind of person. But since going mainly animal-based, I don't get that the same. My response to things is a lot calmer. And I have, now that I've sort of researched a little bit about it, that the benefits that I see that I've heard in people with, depression and anxiety is actually amazing. So I'm not one saying, I'm not going to be telling anyone who comes coaching with me that you've got to go carnivore. Definitely not. It's not for everybody, but, it has been great for me and it's worked for me. And I still am a big believer in definitely animal protein over plant protein as the main source of nutrition. And I think these days, a lot of people are going vegan and vegetarian, but people's health is getting worse. And you can do vegetarian and vegan really, really well, but you do have to supplement because you can be quite deficient if you're not doing it properly. And it can be quite hard work. But then you can do vegan and vegetarian really badly as well. And you're not eating meat, but you're having all this processed food. So your health is, so it's really hard. And I think, people just keep hearing, reduce our red meat, reduce our fat intake, and low fat is the way to go. And, all these seed oils, which are completely detrimental to our health and causing so many problems. But it's what we've been told, and it goes right back to the 1950s when Ansel Keys sort of started this dietary heart hypothesis thing, and his 22 countries, and some of the data got sort of buried and not shown, and anyway, it's kind of how we are here today in this dietary guidelines and that pyramid, and if people are following that pyramid, they generally probably will get sick. They are going to be insulin resistant. If you're having 6 to 11 grams of servings of grains a day, you're going to be eating more than 3 times a day as well. So again, we're eating far too often and the wrong foods as well. So we're causing this high insulin, which causes inflammation and this blood sugar, spiking. And it needs to be flipped upside down, that pyramid. It's wrong. I shouldn't say it's flawed. It's wrong.
I've redrawn the pyramid. I've got a I've got a graphic of the new pyramid and how it should be looking.
Yeah,
I think for me, the misunderstandings about the nutrients in fruit and vegetables is something that I'm very keen on advocating for and educating about, because people really believe they're getting their nutrition from their fruit and vegetables. And, there's a little bit of nutrition in them to some extent, but a lot of the forms of those nutrients are in a very different form than they are in our animal proteins. And I use, beta carotene as a classic example compared to retinol. And, people think that you can get your vitamin A from eating plant foods, but, the conversion is so absolutely tiny. And then if you've got gut issues and things like
Mm-hmm.
that, and you're going to convert even less. And then you may have some genetic SNPs, you know, some changes, you know, some genes that don't convert so well. So I think educating that animal foods, a selection of animal foods can provide all the nutrition that we need is important. And then we can supplement that with some fruit and veggies as we tolerate, you know, and as our for our individual tolerance. And we're all different, so people do have different tolerances for different, you know, different amounts of foods, I think.
Yeah. But I think back to our ancestors before all of this came about. I mean, they weren't vegan or vegetarian, you know, and we were evolved to eat meat. Our digestive system is made to digest meat, and it's got all the amino acids that we need for a healthy, you know, diet. And I think adding, you know, vegetables and fruit to it, that's fine. It's great. You can be, you know, healthy, and if you don't react to it and you've got no issues, great. But animal food should definitely be the most dominant when it comes to.
Yes. Well, we know that we evolved on a majority of animal foods, and, you know, we evolved living around the waterways and the oceans as well. So that's why, you know, some of our essential nutrition comes from things like fatty fish, you know, DHA and some of those nutrients. So it's important that we include those. And I lost my track about, and if we had, you know, our bodies adapted and evolved to use the nutrients that were available in the foods, or from the foods that were available for us. So although we did have plant, you know, different parts of the world had plants and different times, and, you know, and that was forever changing throughout our evolution. Basically, every species or every, you know, place where humans lived survived on those animal foods. And so I think it's just really important that we understand that. And I think we can look after animals better, and we can look after the environment better, but, you know, we also have to look after human health. And it's, as you said, you know, in the beginning, this is really deteriorating.
Absolutely.
Very rapidly. So.
And the studies, and I mean, you know, red meat causes cancer. There is no study that red meat causes cancer. You know, there's a lot of, and I didn't understand studies before I studied with Precure. I didn't know that they could be manipulated and hidden, and these bias, you know, all this stuff. I was like, wow, this is amazing. But yeah, there's nothing to prove it, but it's been villainized for years, you know, cholesterol and fat, saturated fat and red meat. And you know, people are so afraid of high cholesterol. And yeah, it's sad because it's not their fault. It's what we've been taught. And even doctors today, even dietitians, are still promoting this food pyramid. And I mean, my doctor, he nearly had a heart attack when I told him that I ate saturated fat, and I was cooking in duck fat and ghee and you know, pouring it all over my steak. But yeah, I think it's just it's what we've been taught for how many years now.
Yeah. And it is quite, you know, it's scary and disruptive for people. And when people go to their doctors, you know, so I see so many people who come to me with their blood tests, and they go, look, I don't feel right. I don't know what's wrong. I'm exhausted. I've got brain fog, all the things you talked about. I'm exhausted. I have brain fog. I need to have a sleep in the afternoon. And I have, you know, this distended belly after I eat, and bloating and gas. And my doctor, and I can't lose weight. And the doctor just goes, I'll run some bloods. There's nothing wrong. And we go back to what, you know, we were talking about a few minutes ago. They don't check your insulin for a start, so they can't tell whether you're pre-diabetic or not. And there's a whole lot of reasons that your blood sugar may look okay, even if you are insulin resistant. And then their ranges are so broad that you basically have to have diabetes before they even start to acknowledge that there's a problem. And yet there's a gap between optimal ranges and those laboratory ranges where we can see that you're heading down the wrong pathway. And then there's so many other things that show up in blood chemistry as well. And nutrient deficiencies are something that I'm, always able to pick up and identify. And if you don't have the right nutrients coming in, this chemical factory can't do its job properly. And you are going to struggle more with insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome and high blood pressure and all these other contributing factors to chronic disease. So I think that it would be really good in New Zealand if we could upgrade our testing and make it more available, because where I was heading with this is these people go in and they get given, the first thing the doctor goes, oh, your cholesterol's a bit high, we need to put you on a statin.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then they may say, well, here's a sleeping pill because you're not sleeping very well. And here's an antidepressant because you're obviously depressed and you can't lose weight, and eat less and exercise more. And it blows me away in 2022 that is still the standard advice that probably 8 or 9 out of 10 people who come and see me are given by their GPs. And I'm absolutely blown away by it.
It is. And it's just putting a Band-Aid on the symptoms. We're not actually getting to the root cause of why they've got these issues. If we could treat, there's no medication that's ever cured a disease. It's preventing it in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think this is where health coaches are going to come in, and we're all about prevention, preventing these things from happening.
I totally agree. And, the new dietary guideline, new diabetes guidelines, proposed diabetes guidelines published a few weeks ago. And I wrote a big rant about that. And, part of my rant was that we need health coaches in every single doctor's surgery.
Absolutely.
Properly trained health coaches who understand about insulin resistance to help people.
Yes. And I think there's some amazing GPs out there at the moment and that are doing some really good work. And a few of them, Dr. Glenn Davies, he's in Taupo, and he reverses type 2 diabetes, and he's doing amazing work in the community. And he was one of my teachers at Precure for my nutritional science. And then you've got Lily Fraser in Mangere, and she's got an amazing community there. And she's, they're all about the low carb, and Marcus Hawkins as well in botany, and he's doing really, really well. And I just think they're amazing GPs because they've gone and done their own research. When you're a GP, you don't get paid to do research. You get paid to prescribe. You get told this is what you need, and you don't get dietary advice. You just get told, okay, it's low fat and no saturated fat, and and that's what it is. They don't, and these GPs that are doing great work, they've gone and done research themselves and gone, hang on a minute, everyone's just getting sicker. We're putting them on medication, but nothing's working. And I just wish there's more and more GPs that could do that follow in their footsteps.
I think we will find it will change because, like I said, I was a very early advocate for this, and there were other people. So I had mentors and people who I followed who were already, Phil Maffetone was one, and his work was amazing. And, always had the utmost respect for him, and there were many others, but they still call me crazy, but I was really, really crazy back then. And it's so wonderful and encouraging for me to see the shift that's happened over the last 2 or 3 years. I can remember when I talked about insulin resistance on my website, and nobody even knew what insulin resistance was.
No, and that was one of the first videos I posted on my business page, because I just thought people need to know what insulin resistance is. I need to talk about it.
Yeah. So I just think, the more we spread this message, the more we encourage people, and the more people like you out there and me out there, the better. And the doctors are starting to come along for the ride.
Yeah.
And I feel they're not going to change their mind because of what you say or what I say, but they will change their mind because of what their colleagues say. And so now that we've got, I feel like the momentum is starting to grow, and worldwide the momentum is growing. And so
absolutely,
I think we will start to see some changes, but it's not going to be 20 years before.
No, well, that's the thing. Sometimes it can take a while, which is a shame.
Yeah. So you have got a talk coming up in July. Can you tell people about that? And they can.
Well, I thought that I just wanted to July the 28th at 7 o'clock at the Highland Park Community House in East Auckland. I just wanted to do like an introduction and presentation to the low carb ketogenic lifestyle, because I think, you know, a lot of people have their ideas on it, and they may have heard about it, and I wanted to sort of, you know, basically talk about it and give you all the information so you can learn why it is so beneficial. And it's not just for losing weight. So I love to help women lose weight, because if we can be a healthy weight and we're not insulin resistant and become insulin sensitive, then we're going to benefit our health. So this is why I sort of chose my little niche of diabetes and weight loss, because I think if we can prevent just, you know, getting to diabetes, then we're going to get to a healthy weight. So it will just help you have a better understanding of what low carb and keto is. And it's not a diet. I hate that word diet. Diets fail. Diets have an end point, whereas the ketogenic or the low carb life it's a lifestyle choice, and it's something that is it's just a way of life. And so I want to give you that information to understand and why it's so beneficial, not just for weight loss, but for everything, for every chronic metabolic disease out there that's going to prevent you from when you keep your insulin low. So I'll talk a little bit about insulin there, because I do love insulin. But yeah, just to give you an idea of what it's about.
Fabulous. So it's at whereabouts are you having it? At the Highland Park Community House?
Yeah, and that's in East Auckland.
7 o'clock on the 28th of July.
And they can contact me through my Facebook page, Metabolic Switch, and tickets are $25.
That's fantastic. So I hope you'll get a really good attendance there. And let me know when you've got your Facebook page set up, and I'll help you. I'll help with some sharing and help see if we can get some people along to have a listen and ask some questions.
Thank you, Susan.
So the best place to get you is through your Facebook page at the stage. Yeah,
that would probably be the easiest. Yeah, Metabolic Switch.
What I'll do is we'll put all your contact details in the show notes, so we can make sure that people know how to track you down and can find you easily and find your website.
Wonderful.
So any last thoughts you'd like to share?
No, I think we've covered quite a lot today. Yeah. It's been great. It's been really good. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming along and sharing your passion. I'm really excited about that, and helping on this journey of helping New Zealanders to get healthy again.
Yeah. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate your time.